Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, June the 28th, 2023. I'm going to change the format of these videos, at least on an experimental basis. Reason being that I was checking the comments that I was getting, and I did get this comment that I'm kind of getting things the wrong way round. Rather than talking about my subject of the day first, I should be talking about the day's astrology first. So, for example, today I want to talk about Robert F. Kennedy, who declared his candidature for the US presidency in April. Now, normally I would have started with him first and then talked about the day's astrology. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about what's going on today astrologically first. Then I'm going to do my forecasts of the 12 signs. Then I'm going to do my I Ching reading. And finally, I'm going to talk about Robert F. Kennedy. And I'm going to follow this format for a few days and see how it works. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start by talking about today's astrology. And today is Wednesday, June the 28th, 2023. So, there is Robert F. Kennedy, but I'm not going to talk about him straight away. I'm going to talk about today's astrology. And so this is a chart for today, set for noon, June the 28th, 2023, and it's a Wednesday. So you will notice that the moon is now in Scorpio. On the surface, this is not a good thing because the moon does not work well in Scorpio, especially in early Scorpio. The moon is fallen in Scorpio and its degree of maximum fall is 3 degrees Scorpio. So this is not good, especially if you're in the US, Western Europe, if you're in East Asia, Australasia. By the time the moon gets to 3 degrees Scorpio, the day's probably going to be over. So there is a bit of a silver lining to this because the moon in Scorpio makes a trine aspect to Mercury and a trine aspect to the Sun. It also makes a trine to Saturn. So in the jargon, there is a grand trine in water. So there's the grand trine, moon in Scorpio, Saturn in Pisces, and Sun and Mercury in Cancer. So grand trines are about easy energy. Things move very, very quickly and easily, sometimes too easily. So grand trine in water is about emotion. It's a day that is emotional, where we can express our feelings very well. Perhaps it's just a bit too easy to express our feelings, so we don't want to go over the top. We don't want to indulge in maudlin sentimentality. That's not such a good idea. But I don't think that's going to happen because Saturn here, normally a problem planet, is kind of stabilizing the situation. So Saturn is trine the moon. It means it's making sure the moon doesn't get out of control. Saturn is trine the Sun and Mercury. Again, keeping them orderly. So yes, we will have strong feelings, but I think in most cases we're going to know how to control them without repressing them. Also, moon trine the Sun, even though the moon is in Scorpio, moon trine the Sun is very much about the life force. The Sun and the moon are fundamental in astrology. When they're in a good aspect, that keeps us alive. It keeps the heart beating. Moon trine Mercury, we're able to express our feelings. We're able to communicate our feelings. but because of Saturn, we can do it in a way that's very measured, where we don't embarrass ourselves. On another related note, you will notice in this chart that there are no planets in air signs. You know, the moon has moved out of Libra into Scorpio. The Sun and Mercury have recently moved out of Gemini into Cancer. Saturn moved out of Aquarius a long time ago. So for the next week or so, there's nothing in air. Is that a good thing? Well, I'm not saying we're going to suffocate. Air is about the intellect. At a lower level, it's about gossip. It's about keeping things light. It's about intellectualizing. And all of that stuff is not going to really work over the next week. So if you are an air sign, if you're a Libra, Aquarius, or a Gemini, you might have to think very hard about how you're going to deal with the world. You know, you might want to talk a lot, but if you talk a lot, it might not work. You might even embarrass yourself. So you need to accept the situation, be open to a more emotional way of being, at least in the short term. I should also say that the Sun is making a semi-square to Uranus. So there's the Sun at 6:43 Cancer, there's Uranus at 21:36 Taurus, and if you work it out, they're almost exactly 45 degrees apart. And you know, the 45-degree aspect, when it's close like that, is important. I mean, I would have said actually more important, more dynamic than a trine or a sextile. It can make us accident prone. It can encourage us to be very stubborn. You know, we might just hold on to what we feel and believe and refuse to compromise. And it kind of fits in with the fact that we've had this aspect between Mars and Uranus over the last few days, which is quite sort of violent. I've already talked about it. You know, we've got to avoid danger and whatever. And the Sun has come in and it's kind of activating it all over again. So yeah, we have to continue to be careful. We have to continue to avoid doing things which are remotely dangerous. So just don't do it. Just keep it safe. Don't be stubborn. You know, it's better to be proved wrong than to get hurt, basically. So if you're in a dangerous situation, it's okay to run away. It's okay to back down with that Sun square Uranus, because stubbornness isn't really going to get us anywhere. One final point I should make is that the moon in Scorpio is conjunct the South Node. Now, the South Node, as I've said on several occasions, is the line of least resistance. And the moon in Scorpio can be emotional, but can be brooding, can get stuck in these emotional pools of mud, perhaps dwelling on what's happened in the past, feeling slighted, feeling jealous. Really dark feelings can be associated with the moon in Scorpio. And when it's conjunct the South Node, we could get caught in that. We could spend the day just going back over the past and really getting nowhere and being thoroughly unpleasant. So we need to guard against that. And we need to kind of move towards the North Node, because by definition, if the South Node is in Scorpio, the North Node is going to be in Taurus. And that encourages us to be, to be more grounded, not to get worked up about complex emotions, but just to have both feet on the ground and to be reasonable. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, which I'm now doing at an earlier stage in the reading, here goes. This is for today, June the 28th, 2023. Aries, it's a high energy day. but it's not your energy, and you may be concerned that there's too much emotion in the air. Hold your impulses in check and listen to your feelings. Taurus, relationships are complicated and you must let the situation run its course. But in the end, you and someone else can find real togetherness. Gemini, you're having to get used to a new situation and the usual strategies are unlikely to work. It's the heart that matters, not the details. Cancer, if you're typical of your star sign, then it's your kind of day. There's warmth and emotion and you know how to deal with it all. Leo, you could get yourself into something that is difficult to get out of, not helped by your stubborn impulsiveness. In other words, back off. Virgo, if you can unshackle yourself from fixed plans, then you can have a great day. The currents are moving you in the right direction. Libra, decide on your goals, but don't decide on how you can achieve these goals. Complex but interlocking events will work in your favour. Scorpio, it is great that you've got such strong feelings, but if you act on them, you could be following your line of least resistance. You first have to ground yourself. Sagittarius, not everyone is going to be happy with the situation, and you may feel that people are adopting the wrong approach, but maybe you haven't got all the answers. Capricorn, your life force is strong and you're able to push your agenda with great enthusiasm, but never forget the human element. Aquarius, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that you can't benefit from it. And this applies to relationships just as much as career and business. Pisces, using nuclear terminology, you're the graphite rods preventing the reactor from overheating. You calm people and situations down in such a way that they can be useful and safe, as well as dramatic. So those are my forecasts for the 12 signs, and I am now going to switch to the I Ching. As usual, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? So the first hexagram I got was the cauldron, and the cauldron in this context kind of represents our talents and our abilities and how we can bring them all together and let them make their influence on the outside world. And you know, it's quite a powerful hexagram, the cauldron. And there were 2 lines moving, the second line and the third line. Now, the third line refers to a damaged handle. So what does that mean? So imagine you've got a cauldron and imagine inside is some food. I mean, this is how Wilhelm's version of the I Ching goes. But normally we would pick the cauldron up and get access to the food. But because the handle is broken, we don't have access to it. So what that means is, yes, we've got all these talents, we've got these gifts that we're ready to give to the world, but nothing happens. We're frustrated. We can't manipulate the cauldron in order to open it and interact with the world. So we're stuck and we're frustrated. And it may be that we just feel no one's recognizing us. We feel we've got so much to give, and yet we can't give it. We're being ignored. What the I Ching advises is just a bit of patience, It's a temporary situation, particularly as the hexagram does move. We're not stuck in the whole cauldron. We move to a second hexagram, which is hexagram number 35, which is progress. And the I Ching tells us that we will be recognized. And it's also giving us an idea about what this recognition should involve. You know, it's saying, yeah, we may not be in complete control. We may actually be working for someone else, and we're in a position to use our talents and use our influence to make progress. You know, we're helping, for example, from a perspective of a job, we'll be helping our employer, we might be helping our friends. In a family situation, we can use our abilities to help the family. So, you know, it's not about our ego. It's not about us being in control. We're going to get that recognition. So overall, don't get too frustrated if at the beginning of the day you feel that you're being ignored. It's a temporary situation, and if you're persistent, you will get the recognition you deserve. So now I'm going to talk about Robert Kennedy. Now, Robert Kennedy, he's one of the Kennedy clan. His father was Bobby Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1968. And he has some certain controversial views. He's very skeptical about the vaccine. He's also critical of the United States' policy to Ukraine. He sees all these Ukrainians getting killed, and he takes a view that in terms of numbers, the number of Ukrainians getting killed is understated, and people in the West don't realize how many Ukrainians are getting killed. So he's basically saying that America needs to reconsider its approach to Ukraine. Previously, I think he was an environmental lawyer, and he has had issues with drugs long ago. I think in his youth or whatever. Yeah, he's standing for president. So I want to start by looking at his horoscope. Now, to my great disappointment, I thought, Kennedy clan, they would know their time of birth, but no, there is no time of birth for him. So here's his chart. He was born on January the 17th, 1954. So, what kind of person is this who is standing for president? Again, I am hampered by the lack of a birth time. He does not have a great deal of positive planets. Now, positive planets are fire and air. He has only Pluto in a fire sign. There's Pluto in Leo. Generational planet, I don't really count that as being fire. He's got Neptune in an air sign. Again, generational planet, don't really count that as being an air sign. He's got Jupiter in Gemini. So his only traditional positive planet is Jupiter in Gemini. His sun is in Capricorn. His moon is in Cancer. Therefore, he was born around the time of a full moon. So, we might say, well, he's a sensible Capricorn, although he does have some controversial views. And his sun, you'll notice that although he's got the sun in Capricorn, indeed he's got the Venus in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn, they seem to be, very sensible Capricorn. But it's Neptune that creates a bit of confusion, because Neptune is square his sun, square his Mercury, and square his Venus. So he's got Neptune messing it all up. Neptune is creating a lot of confusion there, and I would guess that in terms of his drug use when he was much younger, I suspect that Neptune has a big role to play in that. And this Neptune is actually on the T of a T square. It's a bit wide, but you can see he's got Uranus at 20 Cancer, Sun, Venus, 24, 27 Capricorn, and there's Neptune at 26 Libra. So the dark side of Neptune, yes, it's drugs, but it's also perhaps about fantasies, perhaps about being over-optimistic, perhaps seeing what the world could be like if things were done differently. So that's his Neptune. I think it's probably, in fact, it's definitely pretty more of a problem than a blessing, this Neptune. There is an area of confusion. And just because he doesn't take drugs anymore doesn't mean to say that the confusion has gone away. And his only traditional planet in a positive sign, i.e. in air or fire or air, is that Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is actually not very well placed, and so Jupiter is about big ideas, not even ideas, that's the wrong word. It's about the big, it's about big principles, big philosophy, big philosophies. Then you put it in Gemini, it can put a lot of energy into little facts, picking up facts here and there and whatever. And maybe, you can see Jupiter in Gemini picking up stuff on the internet, maybe about vax and whatever, and focusing on single facts, and maybe not seeing, not being able to put together other facts. So maybe some of his ideas, his political ideas, aren't particularly well thought out, and with all that negativity, those planets in negative signs, you've got Mars in Scorpio, Saturn in Scorpio, the moon in Cancer, in particular, those are the negative, the water signs. He's just picking his stuff up that's around in society. He's picking it up and absorbing it and turning it into policy. Now, I should say, by the way, looking at what he says, I agree with I agree with much of what he's saying, but I'm just trying to be objective on here. What I'm kind of really saying is he's not really presidential material. I don't think he's going to make it to the White House, but that's probably not saying, that's not a very stunning thing to say, and there's certainly no, I'm not going to get any credit for saying that because I'm probably stating the obvious. And so, with the Capricorn, it's not usual Capricorn, I think, because of Neptune's involvement. Now, as far as his presidential bid is concerned, he handed in his papers, whatever federal agency he had to interact with, to put forward his candidature. He handed in his papers on, I think it was April the 4th. So let's have a look at his I've got it somewhere. There's his, or was it April the 4th, April the 5th, somewhere around there. No, it was April the 5th. So you can see that from a bureaucratic point of view, he started the process of trying to get into the White House just before a full moon. I don't know the exact time. I've set this for noon, but it's almost certain that it was just before a full moon. I've set it for San Diego, California. I think that's where he lives, but I don't think it matters. Full moons are not particularly fortunate. It's like, the moon is the public. These are the people you need to vote for you. And then it's going to an opposition of the sun. It's getting hurt by the sun. The full moon is about, something culminating, but, the moon gets damaged. And so I don't think this is a great chart to file the papers for his candidature. So you might then argue, but that's not the point. It's when he made his official declaration that he was going to be a candidate. And he didn't do that on April the 5th. He did it on April the 19th in Boston. So here's the chart for him making his announcement. I think, did he have a party or something? No, I think it was in the morning. I've set it for 9 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't find when exactly his announcement was made. But the ascendant would be different at some other time in the morning, but the planets will be roughly in the same place. And this is certainly a better chart than when he handed in the papers. You'll see that the moon is in Aries and it's applying to a conjunction of Jupiter. That is really good. That is a really good signature to have in a chart. But it is just before a new moon. You can see the sun is at 29:13 Aries, moon is at 21 Aries. Moon makes the conjunction to Jupiter, then it makes the new moon. The new moon, is the beginning. So he's kind of making his announcement right at the end of the lunar cycle. I don't think that's great. He kind of should have chosen a better time. Although it's almost like some astrologer tried to patch things up by getting a chart so that the moon was conjunct Jupiter. I'm sure he didn't consult an astrologer, but you can see somewhat, that moon Jupiter is certainly there. But even then, if he made his announcement at 9 o'clock or just after 9 o'clock, Saturn would have been on the midheaven, which I don't think would have been particularly good for this kind of announcement. So in spite of the moon conjunct Jupiter, I do not regard this as a particularly fortunate time to declare your presidential ambitions to the wider public. It's the dying embers of a lunar cycle. You want to do it, when the moon is waxing, not when it's waning. So overall, it's a nice idea, Kennedy getting into the White House, but I don't really think it's going to happen. So that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.